Can you hear me? Is it on? Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure you didn't think you would be here. We absolutely did not know that we would be here. We had an opening in our schedule after coming back from bringing Our Lady to St. Clare's Catholic School in Edwards yesterday, and then last night at St. Stephen's in Glenwood. We'll be in Silverthorne this evening, and when we had this opening, as we were driving up I-70, I saw a sign that said to Steamboat on our way up. And I was like, okay. I had Alma call over here, and we were so blessed to have Bridget just happen to answer the phone. It wasn't even part of her job that day. So, Our Lady wanted to come here. My name is Lisa Van Bramer, and I'm a physician from Centennial, Colorado. I have a nonprofit that does health and safety programs. And in 2019, one of our projects we created was the Lepanto Project. A lot of the work I do now is in legislative advocacy for pro-life issues. And while I was in biblical school, we heard the story of the Battle of Lepanto, and I said, that's our legislature here in Colorado. We have this culture of death that is trying to stamp out Christendom and just destroy anything that's remotely about protecting human dignity. And I tried on my own power, because I'm a can-do ER doc. I want to just get in and fix it, and it's not working. I mean, I've tried to get good political candidates. I've tried to talk to the legislature, and what I found was that we just need Our Lady. We need God, we need Jesus, but Our Lady's ability to change hearts and minds is what we need in Colorado today. So back in May, I was doing some legislative advocacy training on Zoom and got connected with a pro-life group out of Maryland. And one of the members was reading, a little blurb in one of her Catholic periodicals about the Dan Lynch apostolate. It's out of Vermont. And Dan Lynch, back in the early 90s, accepted the call of Pope John Paul II, who back then, he had a great love and devotion for Our Lady of Guadalupe. He felt very strongly that everyone should come and see her in Mexico City if they could, but he knew that that probably wasn't realistic, so he allowed for 4 authentic copies of the Tilma to be made. He brought in Kodak, and they did a thorough screening. So what you see here is identical in size and in width and in color scheme. It is identical. It is an icon and a third-class relic, and his goal was for her to be in every single parish in the Americas. So we're trying to do that here. While I was on tour with her in Maryland, I just kept, saying, okay, if Our Lady wants to come to Colorado, just make it very clear to me. And my goal was just to bring her here for 1 week around the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, because that's the feast day that was created as a result of the Battle of Lepanto. So back in 1571, when the Ottoman Empire was trying to take over, Pope Pius V called on all the military countries of Europe to come and help fight militarily, but he also asked for all the churches to stay open and for people to pray the rosary. And we won this battle that we shouldn't have. And so I just wanted for her to be in Colorado. My dream was, let's have a Mass at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. I would love if Archbishop Aquila would say the Mass and then pray a rosary, and I wanted the whole state to pray a rosary together. That was the only thing. And then when I reached out to the apostolate, they said, would you like to have her for the whole month of October? And when your mother wants to stay for a month, what do you say? Yes. And so I just reached out. I have a lot of really wonderful friends through biblical school. We are at Our Lady of Loretto Catholic Church in Foxfield, which is sandwiched between Aurora and Parker. And I had people who said, we'll help you. So that's what we're doing. And again, today is I'm just so glad Alma got to see this, because this example of us being in a place that we hadn't predicted is what Our Lady does. She does this. And every time I try to impose on her my will, like, hey, let's go do this, no. She wanted to be here today, and she wanted to be here to see Bridget. I'm very, very, very certain of that. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, I'm going to take you through some things, and then what's beautiful is this is an image that you can touch. You can touch your religious objects to them. We have some free rosaries. We have some free Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we're out of the English miraculous medals, but we have them in Spanish on this side, so you can just see the little sign. We ask that you please put in your prayer intentions. These will be sent back to the apostolate in Vermont, prayed over by some really beautiful people, and will be disposed of appropriately. So back in 1531, a relatively new convert to the Catholic faith, St. Juan Diego, was on his way to Mass. He had to walk 9 miles to go to Mass. And on one of those days, he was going by Tepeyac Hill, which was the site of a former temple to one of the pagan goddesses of the Aztec people. And while he was walking by, he heard this just beautiful music, and then all of a sudden he saw this beautiful lady, all shimmery, and she said, "Juanito, I need you to go to the bishop, and I need you to tell him to build a chapel to my son right here." So he was obedient, and he went off to the bishop, and as you can imagine, the bishop was like, "Who is this peasant?" And he sent him away. So he went right back his same route, and Our Lady saw him again, and she's like, "No, I really need you to go back and ask the bishop again." And this time when he went back to the bishop, with good prudence, says, "Bring me a sign. If this is true and you're not crazy, bring me a sign that this is really, the truth." Well, at the same time, Juan Diego's uncle was very, very ill, and he was dispatched to go find a priest to bring him last rites. Well, he knew he had failed again, and he didn't want to risk running into Our Lady because he knew he probably would. So he tried to go a different route, and you know how that goes. She found him, and she said, "You don't need to worry. Your uncle is healed, but I really do need you to go do what I asked you to do." And so she goes, "Go to the top of this mountain," and at this time it's December, it's cold, most things are not growing, and she goes, "You're going to find some flowers at the top, pick them and bring them down here to me." So he goes up there, and he has a tilma. So a tilma is kind of like their coat. It's like a burlap coat made of cactus fiber. So it's an organic type of material, and it's about 6 feet by 4 feet. And he fills his tilma with the roses that he finds up there. Brings them down to Our Lady, and she rearranges them and sends him on his way. And when he gets to the bishop, he unfurls his tilma, and all these beautiful roses fall out. And the bishop immediately knows that this is the sign he was asking for, because they were Castilian roses that are only found in Spain. Well, as the bishop kind of looked up after seeing the roses, he notices this beautiful image on the tilma. Now, this image was an answer also to his prayer, because at that time, the Spaniards and the Aztecs were in a lot of conflict. The Spaniards had come to conquer and to convert, and the Aztec people who were there, they had a way of life where they worshiped many gods, the sun god, the moon god, and they felt that they needed to appease their god with human sacrifice. So in the tens of thousands, there were children and enemies that would be sacrificed to their sun god. So there was just a lot of conflict. But when Our Lady's image was presented to both, this created the unity that he was asking for. So if you look at the image, the first thing you will notice is that Our Lady's hair is down. That indicates that she's a virgin. The black band around her waist indicated that she was with child. So that was the message to the Spaniards, because that would indicate that she's a virgin and she's pregnant. Now, below that tie, you will see a 4-petaled flower, which spoke to the Aztecs the same message, that there was life and movement within her. And between the band and the flower, that would indicate this person is with child, and we need to take care of her. We need to give her more food and protect her. I mean, wouldn't that be great if we did that today in our society, if we saw pregnant women and we did everything we could to protect them and their unborn children? The other thing is that her mantle was a color of blue that was reserved for royalty in the Aztec culture, so they immediately knew she must be a queen. And before the top of the image was cut off, which is a totally different story, there was a crown. So both to the Spaniards and to the Aztecs, they knew she was royal. When you look at her posture, though, her eyes are down and her hands are in prayer. So that indicated that even though she's a royal, she's humbling herself. And as we know, she's pregnant with our Lord. This is one of the only images of Our Lady where she's actually pregnant with Jesus. And so for the Spaniards, with her hand in prayer and her eyes down, they saw that as prayer. And you'll notice Mary's knee is kind of bent in like this. The bending in of the knee indicated dance, and that's how the Aztecs prayed. So to both the Spaniards and the Aztecs, they could see that this was a royal virgin who is pregnant, who is praying. Now, for the Aztecs as well, they noticed she was standing in front of the sun, so the sun was their god. So that indicated to them that she was more powerful than their sun. I jokingly say the S-O-N is better than the S-U-N, the sun god. Additionally, she's standing on the moon. People will sometimes think that's horns, but that's actually a crescent moon. Below the crescent moon, you will see a winged creature. To the Spaniards, they would have seen that as an angel. And if you notice, the angel is holding the corner of her mantle and the corner of her tunic, which indicates heaven and earth. So she is the queen of heaven and earth. But to the Aztecs, she would have looked, that winged creature would have looked like a phoenix or another one of their gods. So again, she's showing her authority over all of those aspects. Also, on her tilma, you will notice that there are stars. Astronomers later looked at the constellations that were in the night sky back in 1531, and if you are from the heavens looking down through these stars, and as if those stars are going through the tilma, when they look at those constellations from 1531, the one that was above her head was the corona borealis, which means crown. Around her heart was the Virgo constellation, the Virgin, and over her womb was Leo, the lion. Additionally, and this is something you'll want to check when you have a chance to go onto your internet, is to look at the music of the tilma. There's a great one that says the music of the tilma 1 hour loop. They took those same stars and they plotted it on musical staff paper, and there is an ethereal song that will play. And if we have time, maybe during veneration, I'll try and pull it up so you can listen to it. Let's see what else. As far as the picture. Okay, so the other thing is that in addition to the image, Our Lady did appear to the Aztecs. And in their own language, she didn't come and admonish them and tell them, you are awful for killing, your children and other people. Instead, like a compassionate mother, she came to them and she said, I know the pain. I know the pain of sacrificing a child. I know you don't want to do that. I know that you feel that's what your God is asking you to do, but you don't need to do that anymore because my son has done that for all, and you don't need to do it anymore. And from that moment forward, human sacrifice ended within the Aztec people, and over the next 9 years, 9 million Aztecs converted to Catholicism. They had to get special permission from the Pope to do these mass baptisms, thousands of people at a time. Additionally, wedding ceremonies, because the Aztec people were a polygamous society, and it was almost as though Our Lady came and just catechized them instantly. She changed their hearts and their minds, and that had been the hope of the people who had come to Mexico. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention is that on her neck, she's wearing a necklace that has a little cross on it, and that's the same cross that the friars and the other religious would wear. So that also indicated to the Aztecs that, she's royal, she's more powerful than our God, and who we're supposed to be following is the cross, the Christ. So Alma, you've heard my talk a gazillion times. Did I forget anything? Okay, so back in 1921, when there was a very large anti-Catholic sentiment in Mexico, there was a group that tried to destroy the Tilma, and they planted a bomb beneath the altar in the cathedral that she was in. The bomb exploded this marble altar. The crucifix that was on the altar is completely bent forward from the blast. She was up a little bit with glass. The glass didn't even shatter. Years later, there was somebody who was trying to clean, I think, the frame, and they were using some sort of an acid, and it spilled, but it still did not degrade the fabric. So you can see that that's that stain you see kind of on the right-hand side. And what I've heard from people, the original that is in Mexico City, they say that the color, the discoloration from that spill is actually starting to reverse itself. It's becoming less prominent, like it's regenerating. So the key is this, cactus fiber tilma in Mexico City has remained incorrupt. It has not disintegrated. And for the first couple hundred years that they had it, it was not protected. It was, in the humidity and the heat and candles and, people touching it. And it was only, after a couple hundred years that they, put her where people couldn't actually interact with her. Oh, yes. Another thing. So if you look at her eyes, they've looked at her eyes under really high magnification, both of her pupils. And when they do that, what they will see equally in both pupils is a reflection of Juan Diego, the bishop, and the people who were there. So if you ever get really close to someone and you can see yourself in their eyes, that's what they can see when they actually magnify it. These are also things you can just, Google it, and you can see those actual things. There's also people who say that when they've shined really bright light, that the pupils have constricted. Let's see. But I mean, I think, for me personally, I just feel so strongly that our state is at a tipping point, and a point of no return. For me, in the work that I'm doing, I see human sacrifice in our modern day terms as abortion, euthanasia, suicide, and substance abuse, human trafficking. And so those are all of the areas that I think, we can get a little smug with, the Aztecs were, sacrificing their children. What do you think is happening here? And in Colorado right now, you guys, I've talked to my friends in the pro-life movement, our abortion rate is going up because with Texas's law, all the people from Texas are coming to Colorado for their abortions. And we need prayer. Last Saturday, we had a cancellation, so we ended up at the Littleton Planned Parenthood with the group who was doing 40 Days for Life. We had just set up Our Lady, and we were starting to pray a rosary, and this man was just jogging with his dog, and he literally saw her, stopped, got down on his knees, and face planted into the grass, and I'm like, is he okay? But he just started sobbing and praying. And we just continued, Hail Mary, full of grace. We're just like, what's going on? Nobody knew who this person was. He got up, dried his face, had his dog, and as he's walking away, I gave him one of our rosary cards and a medal. He goes, well, I'm not Catholic. I go, you don't have to be Catholic. And I go, do you mind telling me why you were so emotional? And he's like, I've been with somebody who's had 2 abortions, and I just have such regret. And I said to him, there's always forgiveness. There's always a way to just ask God for forgiveness and to do better. And I think you're on the right track with just even how you're feeling today. And he goes, okay, well, I got to finish my run. And he put it in his little fanny pack and just took off. And all of us just looked at each other, and they're like, one person has been at that corner for 20 years, and he goes, I've never seen that. So one other thing, I'll tell you, because last night I was asked to tell some of the just beautiful blessings and miracles that we've had. The very first day that we had her was October 1st, so it was our first Friday Mass, and one of our parishioners gave me a rose from her Our Lady of Guadalupe rose bush. And I had brought it with me because we were invited to the Marian Conference with Father Donald Calloway and Father Chad Rippinger and Father Chris Alar. And I brought it with me because this was the most fantastic rose I've ever smelled. I had never smelled anything like it. So I brought it, and I was telling the story, and there was a group of people, and there was this woman off to the side, and I said, would you like to smell it? And she kind of waved it off, but then she did, and all of a sudden just tears. And she's like, I haven't smelled anything in 4 months since I had COVID. And she's a nurse, so I've talked to Joan. She's like, well, it was just that isolated incident, because I was like, did you go home and like fry bacon? Like what, did you continue to test it? So it didn't stay. Then we were in Colorado Springs at St. Paul Catholic School, and we didn't have a mass or a rosary, but we just had the children come in and venerate right in front of the school office. And about an hour before we were ready to leave, this seminarian who's teaching theology there brought a student to us, and the student looked like he'd been crying. And he's like, Vinny, tell them. And he's like, he'd been in a bad collision for football and had been in chronic pain for 2 weeks, like to the point where the teacher was like, he would have to sometimes stand, or then he would sit. And he's like, after he venerated and went back to class, he sat down and his pain was completely gone, and it freaked him out so much he started to cry. And when I talked to the principal, she's like, he's an altar server. He's such a holy and pious kid. She's like, he's not faking it. And this one, again, being a physician, we were at the pro-life dinner with Bishop Golka, and we had, there was like 800 people at this pro-life dinner. We had this really beautiful area off to the side where people could venerate. The very next morning, we were at Divine Redeemer School, and this woman comes up, and she's like, I looked on the schedule to find you because I have to tell you what happened last night. She's like, I've had blood clots because of COVID. And she's like, I have just chronic, every time I take a deep breath, I get pain. I can't take a deep breath. It wakes me from sleep. She's like, when I went back to sit down at the dinner after venerating, she's like, I could take a deep breath. She's like, and then I slept through the night, and when I woke up this morning, no chest pain, and I can breathe deep. And I'm like, stay on your blood thinner, go get a scan. But these are the types of, and I don't know, Our Lady is just so good. And I know that there's those physical healings, and being a physician, it's like I want this objective data, but I can just tell you, we've given out probably 4,000 rosaries, probably close to 8,000 medals, and those all translate to people over these last 26 days. I just know that she's here to heal, to comfort, and to change hearts and minds. Every little thing that we do, especially as Catholics, we are now being called to speak out. We are to talk truth with love, but you guys, we are at the precipice. Our Lady is here to do her part to help, but we have got to be the faith and works piece of this equation. And so that's why I'm here. We were very blessed. The apostolate has loved what we are doing, and they've asked us to keep her till the end of November. So we'll be adding some more dates. If you or other people in Colorado, just go to our website, which is triumphofmary.org, and it is on the bottom of the rosary card, like the picture of the rosary, you'll see our website. That's where the updated schedule, as I can update it. Right now I'm like 3 days behind. And I tell people, before you go to any event you see on the calendar going forward, please check that day to make sure it's still happening. Example, we were supposed to have the St. Joseph Conference at St. Thomas More on Saturday, but the person who's presenting got COVID this week, so he had to cancel. So we have all day Saturday open. So I don't know what Our Lady's going to put in there, but I tell people, because of COVID and all that stuff, just check. And like today, this I don't even think is on the website. I think I updated the website at like 6 this morning just to show it that we were going to be here. But I want to give you guys plenty of time for veneration, or I don't know, is the Bridget, is the plan for a rosary or, okay, we'll do a rosary. But during the rosary, feel free to come up, and like I said, there's free medals, you can touch them. Please put your intentions, just pour out your heart to Our Lady. She is here for you, she loves you. She loves Colorado, you guys. She doesn't want to leave, and I don't want her to leave. I don't know how I'm going to give her back. I'm like, can she just stay till December 13th, after her feast day? But I think with that, I will entertain questions. Does anyone have a question? Oh, and go ahead. Go ahead. And the rosary cards too. So we have rosary cards in English and Spanish, and I would say if you have family members that need to be reintroduced to the rosary, please take those. Additionally, I designed the original one for Our Lady of Loretto when I came back from Medjugorje the first year. My sister-in-law, who was a brand new Catholic, had just gone through RCIA. She didn't know how to pray the rosary, and it was really uncomfortable for her because we prayed it all the time. So this is something that we can even customize for your own parish, or we've done them for funerals. It's free. Like, I can send you the template, and then you can have them printed. But we customized this one for this event. Yeah, and the website's on there. So I was able to pull up the music of the Tilma, and so it's called Music of the Tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe 1 Hour Loop. And I'm telling you, like, orchestras all over the world have set this to music, and it is fantastic. Oh, okay, the other thing is there's a stethoscope down there, and if you're gonna put it on, what you wanna do is it angles like this, because your ear canals actually go towards like your throat, so you'll wanna put them in so it's facing towards the front, and then kind of tap it to make sure it's on the large part of the bell. There are people who can hear a heartbeat over the womb, and the womb is where the four-petaled flower is, or over Our Lady's heart. And I've had friends go, well, is it my own heartbeat? I'm like, well, hold your wrist while you're listening and see if it's concordant. We've had people hear it, we've had people not hear it. It's just one of the graces that people may experience. If you don't hear it, it does not mean Our Lady doesn't love you. It's just a beautiful grace. All right, so I'm gonna start the music. And thank you for your attention.